You have to walk a mile in somebody's shoes before you know who they are.
Everybody's story is different.
And I kind of felt like I should have died.
We're their next door neighbor, we're their siblings with all the same challenges.
To be in their boots is to try and somehow understand what it was like.
This is my story.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of In Their Boots. Every week, we introduce you to Americans here at home whose lives have been impacted by the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And by sharing their stories, we hope to inspire our viewers to take action, get involved in their communities, and come to help out those who've served and their families. On our website, you'll find numerous ways and organizations that are looking for volunteers just like you. And if you're a veteran out there, or close to one who's in need of resources, be sure to check out the Solutions tab on our website. There you'll find links to over 50 nonprofit organizations who are willing and ready in place to help you and your family. Which brings us to this week's real story, where we'll meet U.S. Army veteran Angie Peacock as she comes forward to tell her story of military sexual trauma and her time at war. Following this story, we'll catch up with Angie at her home now in St. Louis via webcam and see how she's doing today. And we'll speak with Smita Santiani, an expert in military sexual trauma, who will explain to us this growing problem and what we can do to help. But now, here's this week's real story, Angie's story.
I told my platoon sergeant. I said, hey, I think I got raped. He's like, what? I told him the whole story, and he said, if you tell, they're gonna make you look like a whore. They're gonna say that you were drinking, and it's all your fault, and you better just keep your mouth shut. Besides, what's it gonna do for you? The guy's gonna get moved and taken his rank, and you're gonna have to live with this forever. So just deal with it. And I'm like, okay, I will. I didn't know what else to do. And he was the one I trusted the most of that company. I came home on leave, and I was drinking like the whole time and just staying drunk. I just didn't want to feel anything. And I noticed, I remember writing in my journal saying, I'm so irritable, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like every time somebody said something, I just snap at them. And this isn't like me, and I don't know what's wrong. And I really didn't connect the two. I just thought I must be just a mean person, you know? I didn't know that that was like preliminary symptoms of PTSD. Within a year, they say, congratulations, you're going to Iraq. And really at the time, I was already a sergeant. I was doing a staff sergeant's job. I was prepared. I had already been in the military 6 years. I was ready to go. I already had flashbacks. I already had nightmares from the rape. I started getting panic attacks. And at the same time, I'm trying to be like a non-commissioned officer, being in charge of soldiers, having to hold my, my stuff back. I can't show any emotion because that makes me look weak. And of course, there's a stigma around mental health. You don't go get help. You just shut your mouth.
Our women are so competent and they're so wanting to do a good job that they can mask their inside feelings. And they've been taught in the military how to do that, how to just be a good soldier and get back to work. And so that's what a lot of women do.
I remember everybody telling me, Angie, I got my letter in my hat to my family. If I die, can you get it out of my hat and send it to my family? And I said, and everybody was telling me all where their letters were. And I said, well, what if I die? I'm the one that knows where everybody's letters are. As soon as we got to Baghdad, we started getting shot at. And I just said, wait a minute, this is not what it was supposed to be like. We're supposed to be here to free the Iraqis or whatever. It was just like a rude awakening. Like, boom, you're in a war. Compounding my PTSD from before and then being exposed to that, the psychiatrists say your wheels were greased. You couldn't have stopped it if you wanted to, you know?
Some studies suggest that people who have sexual trauma are more likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder than combat experience alone. And some of the reasons for that is sexual trauma, especially military sexual trauma, is a very personal, isolating event. It's not a shared community event like a combat situation. If there's a bomb that goes off, it's a shared experience. Sexual trauma is a very isolating experience. People sometimes just have to hide it, and then the symptoms come out later.
I lost 48 pounds in stress. I had got gastrointestinal problems. My blood pressure shot up, my heart rate shot up, my fevers every day, and I thought, I am not gonna make it. And I literally remember standing there looking at the sunset in the middle of Baghdad and thinking, I am gonna die in Iraq from this. And it just came to a point I just broke. I just couldn't do it. And they said, you're going home. So after 6 months, I got sent back. They put me in the hospital for 2 weeks. They ran all kinds of tests. They checked everything. While I was waiting, I found out that on the way back home, after they dropped me off, my convoy got hit. Talk about guilt. I remember looking up at the wall, and I looked for the psychiatry office, and I just bolted straight for psychiatry. I'm like, that's it. That was my breaking point, honestly, right when I got back. I had nobody to talk to. My unit was there. That's my family. And so I walked upstairs, and I sat in the office, and the guy asked me what was wrong, and I just broke. I couldn't hold it in no more. I said, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. And he said, you're not allowed to be around weapons. You're not allowed to be around soldiers. We're chaptering you out, period. That is what took me to the bottom so quick, because I had already done 7 years. Usually when you do 7 years, that means you're staying. You ain't going anywhere. So I went from like super soldier to absolutely nothing, piece of shit in 1 day. No soldiers, no weapons, devastated. I did not leave the house. I stayed in the house. I was so depressed and just trapped in my mind with Iraq and the rape over and over and over that I started taking painkillers, and it felt really good.